Hey everyone, are you ready to get your mixed media messy on? Because I sure did in this layout. So my original plan was to do just a nice little strip of colour down the middle with these distress oxides. This is the faded jeans one we got in the kit. And then as I'm playing, it just got bigger and more involved and more layered, and I love it, don't get me wrong. But I was sort of going for it just a strip with some, and then I was going to use the stencil and do some vertical and a little bit of cross horizontal, and it just I can't contain myself to a little bit of mixed media. I am really just going to admit to it and stop being in denial about it and just enjoy the fact that I love mixed media everywhere. So I used the packaging technique. I just sprayed a little bit of the Distress Oxide spray on and then added some water with my spray bottle and then just rubbed it on the paper. Here I've got an eyedropper or a pipette. And I just wanted to fill in that little bit of space so that it was like a harsh straight line from the edge of the plastic. So I just want to fill it in a bit. It's just easier to do that with the ink splatters than to get out a paintbrush and to do it separately. So, and because distress oxides, when you mix the water in, the colours all changes and whatnot. So it's nice to just add a few more drops on top, and it layers the colour in different shades. And I'm just having a little play, making it all move around, and here's where it just gets bigger and bigger. So I've got a baby wipe here that's pulling up some of the colour, moving some of it, and trying to keep my hands clean, and I say that in inverted commas because it's just not happening. So that's dried. I use my heat gun and I've got out some texture paste, and I'm going to use the carved pumpkin colour that we also got in the kit to colour the texture paste. And I'm using that, just mixing it in. You can put a fair bit in, but not heaps, because obviously it'll make it really runny. You can thin out the texture of texture paste a little without it being a problem, but if you do too much, then it becomes a problem. I love this stencil. It's probably one of the coolest ones ever. So I'm just going down a couple of sections of it. I just want to have that vertical, so I'm still sticking with that idea of using the stencil in a vertical and then some horizontal to juxtapose against it. But you can see I'm just putting it randomly through the stencil. I don't want it to be straight edges. I don't want them both to finish at the same section. I'm doing now the dotted dash kind of line, so just having a little play. I'm really being lazy and not cleaning the bottom of the stencil in between, so I'm just trying to be a little bit careful, but I don't mind if there's a little bit of extra. In fact, I just rub it in like this and then I can do that. And this just adds to the grungy textured randomness as well. Just using my spatula to add some of the texture paste, and it's really cool. There you go. Couple of dashes, couple of lines, couple of splodges. Just thinking about having my photo in the middle there, so that some of this will be on the be surrounding it, not the whole thing to be visible. It's usually what I do with mixed media, is just have some of it visible in the background. So I'm going to put that to the side dry. I'm just cleaning up my stencil. You can see I've got a fair bit of texture paste to the side there. So after I just double check with my photo, I'm going to move that to the side, and then I'm getting out a piece of it's actually just like greaseproof paper that you use for cooking, but it's like really cheap. It's really old, so it doesn't actually help in cooking. So I just put it in here and I use it as texture paper, or I guess it's probably like what is that paper called for jelly printing? Deli paper. Guess it's kind of like that. So I put on that texture paste, let it dry a bit, splodging some of that distress oxide. I'm just using one of these dabbers. I'm just squished it a lot so there's not too much colour on it, and that way it works through the stencil. And that's going well. I do need to clean it because there is a fair bit of colour on it, because the distress oxide's obviously wet. So just have a little play, and it works pretty nicely. When I go to do the orange, I obviously didn't take enough colour off, and it was going to be not good. So I do put some here, and I want to keep those middle stencil bits, but when I get to the orange it just doesn't work nicely with me in the stencil, so then I just ended up having it as one of the orange through stencil. So I think I don't really get enough colour off. And you can see here when I lift it, it's just gone run underneath the stencil because it's too wet. But that's okay because the little splodges look really cool from the dubber anyway. It just adds that layer from on top of the blue. And what I'm going to do is add more layers in on this piece in just different ways. So I'm going to use just a plain white texture paste through the stencil. And that add some, really obviously some texture, but also another layer to the dimension of the page. And you can see I'm just randomly putting it through spots so that it's not all straight lines. Sometimes, you know, it could be one end to the other end just straight, but for me, just wanted it to be a bit random. This would have been one of those, it's fun to make a background like this and then like punch shapes out of it, and to use as that can be the embellishment in the background, so you could cut out a whole pile of circles. I'm just going to use my paint pen, and again, paint pen's too wet for the stencil, so that's not going to work. I do pull out this pen, but if you know me, my mixed media is not even dry, so of course that's not working. Instead, I'm going to just draw and do some mark making, and then I get a bit lazy and crazy and just splatter the pen all over the page. So in it goes. Just going to do that with my paint pen, and this is just one of those paint pens that I've gotten from Big W. I think it's Pinor, P-I-N-O-R. If you want to know, ask me and I will let you know. I'll go down and check. Sorry, I'm not in my craft room, so I can't double check. But they're only a few dollars at Big W, and they've got like, this one's a really wide brush, chisel kind of end, and then there's ones that are wide, and there's ones that are fine point, so you can get away with a few things. So that one I've just done some dashes and some splatters, and you can see it will look really cool on top. Now once it's dry, you could use stick it on like tissue paper. Just be mindful that some of the paint would become wet again from the gel medium, I would imagine. But if you put it underneath, it'd probably be alright. Using the paint pen again just to add some more of the lines, the white one and the black paint pen. Just going on, it's sort of like the sections of the stencil, the line and the texture paste kind of stencil area. The guide, so I'm just putting it in to see where it goes. And it just makes the page all come together really nicely. What I do is just look around, and if there's a spot where it's like, well, it needs a bit of black, it's missing something, I will add it. So I'm going to add some layers behind my photo, because obviously my mixed media is taking up a fair bit of space, and my photo is it's a photo of a photo, so there's a crease running through the photo, because the photo obviously got folded at some stage. And this is my grandparents, and I'm not sure who is in the photo, if it was aunt and uncle or dad and aunt, or I'm not sure. Would have to double check. But anyway, it's a nice photo, nice memory. Well, it's not my memory, but obviously it's a part of my history. I'm just going to add a whole pile of different layers. So I'm using the Printable Project Life cards. I'll just cut some down. I've ripped that edge, but it's just not going to work. It's too much of the same colour. And I remembered I pulled out these rose gold paper clips from my stash, so they're going to be used. That's a nice little, I do want it, usually you put paper clips up the top, but the heads are up there, so I like it down here, and it's going to hold that little camera in. And that's going to be the start of all the clusters. Now I'm getting my pattern layers done the way I want them, so I'm just going to use my tiny attacher to staple it all together. That way it's not going to move or change when I, take it all apart to add double-sided tape. It's just a nice little quick way to get it the way you wanted it. Haven't stuck down my photo yet. And then I'm just really looking, obviously there's lots of embellishments to look through, trying to work out what I want and how I want to put it. The moment I'm waiting for that background piece of paper to dry so that I can use it as my layer behind this photo. And then I'm just going to have a little play with some embellishments. I'm going to put this photo down here. And then I'm going to commit to my photo. I don't know why I didn't commit to it before. Oh yes, I do know why, because I didn't want to staple it down. I wanted to glue it down. So I'm going to put it on a bit of an angle just so it's a bit fun against the layers. And there we go. And then we go. Here we're going to use this. It's mostly dry. It's dry enough. It's not like the layers aren't really thick. It's just that it's a few layers and there's a little bit that's wet. So on it goes, just having the play with the ripped edges to get it the way I want. It just wasn't going to be the right background to the next layer, so instead I pull out some black cardstock, rip it slightly, but it worked anyway because I prefer the ripped edge to the right there, and I'm just going to cut it down, and it just makes it pop off that page much better off that background paper. Just cutting it down so I don't cover up all my mixed media. Obviously, again, mixed media does get covered up a bit, and that's why sometimes it looks a bit horrible and like, what could you do with it? But when you're covering it up and adding layers and embellishment clusters, it all works out. It's nice to have that bit of detail. Just have a little play with the way it could sit on the background paper, whether it's the other page should go, but no, keep with my first idea. And I'm going to stick that down. Just use a bit of double-sided tape, and then I do use a bit of wet glue just to make sure it sticks. Or do I use a bit of, no, not wet glue here, but when I stick it all down to the page, I make sure it sticks with double-sided tape and with a bit of wet glue, just to make sure. Now it was going to sit really nicely there. It does cover up a lot of what's going on, but it also didn't have any of the pure dark orange color of the distress oxide, so just going to use the nozzle and the spray, wand I guess, to add some ink splatters. Going to give them a dry. Some of them do like drip around as I'm drying it with my heat gun, because I use the heat gun to dry the front and the back. I'm just ripping the edge because it was a bit too much. I wanted a bit more vertical, more than it was vertical and wide, or vertical and horizontal, I guess is probably the right words. But anyway, just giving those ink splatters a fair bit of a dry, just trying to make sure that they are. And you can see that I lift it and it moves a little. Why did I... Oh, right. I was going to say, why did I keep the drying time in? But nope, I've cut most of it out, just kept a little bit in there. Crazy. Sometimes I just baffle myself. Alright, there we go. Wet glue, stick double-sided tape, stick it down. And that just is a good fun layer. I'm going to add some of the last finishing touches. There is a few different things that I do. First I get out my pen and I go through the crosses on the stencil, and I'm going to add a border, but I don't go from one side to the other side, round the other side, like on each side of the paper. I just do one section on each side of the page, and some are longer than others, and I just really like the way that it makes it just like, makes the border make the whole page pop rather than it all being just loosely on a page. As you can see, doesn't take too long, just quick little drawing through the stencil. You could definitely you don't need the stencil, but if you're lucky you have the stencil, but you could definitely just do little crosses. Sometimes mark making, I think we overthink it a bit, so it's good to have this stencil so that we can have it all uniform. And we can just do it without trying to work out what I want to do. I'm just going to go through the embellishments on the top of my really useful box to work out what I want to put there. It needs a little bit of layering and stuff on the edges. I don't want anything else on the page. It just needs to all be around the photo. So I pulled out that little card that says wonderful and this blue ticket, and I'm going to find a couple of different labels. So these are part of the printables, so I'm just cutting them down really quickly with a little white border. Then it doesn't look like you've done messy cutting. And I'm going to layer them up in a spot, like lay them up so you can see all the colours and the angles, and you get the benefit of them. And also some other word phrases just to make sure I get some goodness on here. Staple that down so that they stay as I'm sticking, and I'm going to add that ticket, and that's going to be the start of the cluster there on the left. So you can see there I've got that word phrases that are down the bottom there. That's just going to join the tabs and the ticket on the left to the flower and the camera on the right. Just going to use some double-sided tape to put down this wonderful after I put down these phrases. So there we go. You can see it looks good to have it all really close to the cluster. That way you can see the mixed media going on the page, and your eye's not wandering too much from the middle. Well, I guess it's the left middle to the left kind of thing. It's not dead on middle. There we go. I'm going to have a little play with some of the enamel dots and the enamel hearts, just to get some more texture and sprinkles on the page. Gosh, sorry, yawning. I'm just going to add some wood veneer, because wood veneer is just cute, especially in this kind of size. And then I'm just thinking it needs something. It needs a title. Would really love like letters that are thin but also really tall to go across the bottom there, but I don't have any, and I don't feel like cutting them out, and that's probably not really the look I was looking for anyway. So just going to add some washi tape in a couple of spots, just to bring in some of that green, bit of different darkness to it. It's not just all black as the dark colour. And then I'm going to use these they're not thickers, they're alpha stickers, to spell out the word family on the bottom there, where the black is overhanging as the photo layers. And they're going to go there. Let's move them along a little. I'm not very good at obviously positioning on the first try, unless I'm starting from dead left or dead right. But then I also pull two of the lowercase i's so that they could be like dash lines at the beginning and the end of the word family, sort of like highlights that this is the title. It's sort of like I was trying to work out what's on there that I could use, and inverted commas came, but then I'm like, you don't want to write family in inverted commas because it literally is family. You're not, being ironic or sarcastic or anything. So instead, I use the i's as dashes. So I cut out this little paint strip and this love heart. And that's going to go on there just like that. And I'm going to use my black pen to add some blackness to those layers, some outlining the heart. Then I'm going to quickly write some journaling, power of magic, come back, and I'm going to scruffle up that little paper layer that I use with the waxproof paper, and then I'm going to add some borders to some of the pieces. So a dotted dash border to this wonderful piece, and then a line border to this label here, just so that they can have another pop of black, but also it just highlights the page a little. I'm just going to do little corner borders on this little layer of pattern paper. And that's pretty much it. I just use my thin pen to add a little bit of definition to the background as well, because obviously it's a lot thinner than my paint pen. It just adds another pop of interest to it all. Again, getting in a few different spots. It's like the mixed media has its own clusters, like the embellishments do. So you can, have them together rather than trying to work out where it goes if they're not all joined together. And then that's my layout. So here's the close-ups, and hopefully you're enjoying playing around with your mixed media kit alongside with the main kit. So hopefully you're getting creating, and have a great day. Bye guys.